All right, welcome everybody. This is Youngstown's Talk Channel. I'm Joe Danyi, your host for this morning program. Something was missing from our local, the voices of the people, and being able to, sort of share your concerns and your comments and whatnot. So we decided to reinvent this, give the Valley a place to talk about things both on the local level, national level, and whatnot, and extending into outside of the local area. If you're, the national, if you're listening from different country, different state, it's not exclusive to Youngstown. Like everything that I talk about on my local community, you're going to have your version of it. And, the goal of citizenry is to be active, be concerned, care, invest in communities. And so you're going to have whatever we talk about here in your hometown as well. So I think it's super important. So if you want to call the program today, 330-595-1600, 330-595-1600. And you can also respond, comment on any of the social channels, and I will see those comments roll through, and I'll be sure to share those comments during the program today. So first off, I do want to talk about, this is Youngstown Studio. This is something that we put together over the years to be able to do recordings and broadcast and podcasting and so on. And so we just decided that, we're going to lend it into the local scene of talk radio style, content. And so, Youngstown, I love this city. I was born here. I watched businesses grow, die. I watched politicians come up, go all the way to the national scene. I watched entertainers, musicians, really come through this town. And what I love most about it is that it is a sort of like an incubator. And what's nice about it is, like, when you have a community that has smaller population, less money, lower cost of living, it sort of gives people resources that if they move to a bigger market that they wouldn't necessarily have at their disposal. So the cost of housing and cost of labor, if you wanted to invent and, innovate some new product, you have manufacturing, you have great work ethic, and you do have resources that are here, even if most of them sit on the sidelines and they're idle for the most part. But with that comes, when I was a kid, innovations and things that were being developed always happened on the West Coast. And there was a joke that if, wait 4 years, and those innovations will eventually come to us. And so you'll watch the news about something that's happening in California, and you just eyeball it and know that eventually it makes its way over towards us. And I really don't see that and know that that's the case anymore. I think we shortened that curve where when things get developed, they make it here a lot faster than a couple years. And so if you could move to Youngstown, Ohio, establish a project or business, benefit from the highly specialized workforce, access to every utilities. I mean, we've got power generation here that we're, supplying big plants. And so we have waterways, we have all the major thoroughfares coming right through all of our towns here. And so we're connected in every way that the big markets are, but you have the advantage of having access to far more people and specializations and whatnot. So I do think we have a big advantage. So the question is, why in smaller markets, they always seem to struggle a great deal with keeping projects, not letting them go to shit, not letting things get destroyed in weird, spectacular ways. I mean, we've watched several things that had national potential come to our area, and it's almost like we get handed this football, and it's a good thing, and somehow we fumble it eventually. And so, as sort of like a engineering minded person, I like to go back and reverse engineer it and find out, like, what if I go back in my time machine and go back to the beginning, how you could have made it go a little bit different so it wasn't quite a big fumble. And it always comes down to the interests of those involved, and you really can't have things happen without somebody finding out what's in it for them, whether it's politicians and, using projects not for the betterment of the community, but to gain power, gain influence, gain favors, and whatnot. And I've watched this happen even in the private business. When, I started my business in the early 2000s. And I'm this idealistic headed person that goes out into the marketplace thinking I'm going to put a good product, let my services and my products speak for themselves, play a straight game, have integrity, be honest. And when I started shopping how everybody else did business, it really wasn't as congruent as I thought it was going to be. There were a lot of people that, for instance, when you just get in business, the people that you attract somehow are the people that have kind of gone through other providers and they're willing to give you a chance for some reason. So you have a high probability of running into the most unscrupulous types of businesses. So like I was just putting my stuff together, and one of my first big clients owned a chain of restaurants. And one of the first things that I was asked to do, and not the first, but within the first 6 months of doing it, they had a court case, and they handed me a floppy disk, and they said, we have a court case, and is there a way that you can go into this floppy disk and change the dates on these files so it looks like that the data was created at an earlier date? And there was big money involved, and this was the contemplation was, I have this ask of me. It's not a moral ask at all, not an ethical ask at all, but at what risk now do I have of, if I don't do this thing where I don't help somebody win a court case by fraud, whether or not I'm going to lose this whole chain of restaurants that I'm currently servicing. And so that dilemma was like, I can't do that. And I lost the business because I wasn't willing to do that. And I'm thinking, like, is that how people make it? Like, do you go against your morals and ethics just for the sake of making a buck? And this happened often enough that I thought, man, this whole business thing absolutely sucks. Why can't we just have a great product and be honest about it and make a good living out of it? I mean, and so it jaded me a little bit. I was a little bit cynical thinking that was most people, but then 90% of the customers just played a straight up game too. And you had to tolerate every once in a while having a good deal come across and having to turn it down just for the sake of being honest. And I wish more people. So you take that same philosophy and you add that into politics. So let's just say a politician gets courted with a national entity coming into town, want to manufacture a product, right? Sounds good. It has good, community value. And at the same time, I can make some, deals. Like, I'll do this for you, and I'll make the permitting process easier. I'll give you some tax abatements and bait you into town. But I've got an ask. And it might not be changing the date on a floppy disk for a court case, but it's some variation of that, because I don't think that you have people that can pass on it. Like my objection was that was my principle, and I wasn't going to, trade who I was for the sake of getting money. But how many other people who weren't me, would be tempted into saying, oh yeah, you know what? I'll pull some strings for you if you give me this thing. And so like you have this weird back scratching cabal that happens in small towns where everybody's looking for the advantage if they can get away with it because of their own political, and it goes to shit because it wasn't based on real principles. I would rather have a good deal go bad, right? Get off the table, but I can say that I was proud of how the deal went down. Let somebody else field it who can easily, I'm almost sure that there was a company that changed the date on the floppy disk and let the person present evidence fraudulently. I'm sure that happened because there was enough money in it that I can absolutely picture someone who wasn't me taking that deal. So, I used to be really gung-ho about when a project would come to town. And now I'm like wincing, like, how can I get my influence in politics enough where I could talk people out of the back scratching thing and just let a deal be a good value for the people, and let authentic natural support, meaning that politicians and business want the best for each other. So I will help you in all the ways that I would help a regular citizen, and legitimately not breaking rules, not make special arrangements, not laying out some of it for your own enrichment. And that's sort of like what we're experiencing on the national level with Doge. Is there's a great deal of people who were interested in making government deals if there was something in it for them. It couldn't have been just about public service where I love my country and I'm doing this for the sake of it's good for my country. And I think, like, I don't necessarily think you can get that out. I think the machine is too big. People are too self-interested. We have this secular philosophy, and it's going to be, crushing the other guy to get ahead. And if it means using the power at your disposal to do it, I don't know of many people who will pass that up. So I don't necessarily think there is an ultimate answer. I think the only thing that's possible to do is to just keep looking for the profile of someone who you think's a straight shooter and supporting them. All right, 330-595-1600. I'll be reading your comments as well. So if you want to comment on this video, I'll read those. Let's see. Let's go to a phone call. All right. Let's see if this works. Line 1, you are on with Youngstown's Talk Channel. What can I do for you?
Am I the first person to call, Joe?
I think you are.
Yeah. How are you? I just want to be the first person to call.
Yeah, and since you're the first person, let me make sure that everybody can hear you. So talk real quick.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. All right.
You there?
I am.
You there? We good?
We're good, I think.
Joseph, you honestly, you are always such a breath of fresh air. It's so positive. But there is no way these politicians will ever not help their buddies out. Ever. That's the problem right now.
So if we have the mechanisms of government where everybody's using the power for their own interests, then what's the answer? Like, let's just say, Chilcan or a power production facility come to town, and we want to keep it free from the entanglements of government. Do we just make it so the government's not allowed to touch private business?
I don't know what the answer is, man, but there's so much. Like you said, it's not just our area. Like, our area takes a bad rap, and deservedly so, because my God, like Isaac and I, even a couple weeks ago, when we were talking about the mayor putting his daughter-in-law in a position for a new position, making $80,000 when she wasn't the best person, and they're like, "Oh, it was done by an individual panel, and he had no influence." Bull crap. He did. The name. It's the same old thing. And I don't know if we just need to get people in there, and then once we catch them doing it, we, the voters, need to hold them accountable, right? I mean, because you need government involved in a city like Youngstown to help grow the area, because you're not gonna be able to do it in the current state without having the government involved doing tax abatements and that kind of stuff. But it's just so frustrating for the people, and I know the people are just tired of it.
Well, and then you complicate it, because now we have two tribes, the Republicans and the Democrats, who, if it's your guy, you're willing to overlook a whole lot of stuff and let them get away with a little bit more murder than the other team. So it's not only in principle, like maybe you or I can be objective with no matter who it is and hold them all to the same standard, but with these strong tribes, there's no way that happens objectively.
No, never objectively. And the problem is, we will hold to the fire anybody who doesn't have the best interest of the people. We've gone after Republicans. We've gone after Democrats. And people can't do that because they're so blind and so, like I say on Facebook all the time, you're just sheep to your political party. It's gross. And I know Isaac and I are planning on really touching about that as we continue to do this. The new radio channel, whatever the heck we're calling it. What are we calling it, Joe? Youngstown Talk Channel?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to keep talking. We're going to keep touching on that, because it's just, these political parties just drive divide. They create bias. voters then say, well, my guy, like you said, my guy's fine. It's fine. You know, it's okay. We don't care. They're doing good. They're a Republican or they're a Democrat. And it's just so gross. And what's amazing to me, where I sit in the middle, trying not to pick sides, trying to pick the people who I think are going to do the best for the area and the best for, just the people. You see these other people that are just totally blind by their party. It's just nasty. So I don't know, man. I'm not sure what the answer is, though.
Well, I want that to be a regular theme, because I would like to recruit more people to break away from those tribes and, and be like, if we pitch it right and we know that there's some safety in people who can, disagree and have conversations without, calling each other stupid and names and whatever. But I just don't think we have that level of decorum where that's even a possibility, unless, you can buy into that brand.
Is it decorum, or is it, like, I hate to say intelligence, or is it's almost like it's the lack of people being able to see where the other side is coming from, and the lack of people being able to even listen to what the other people are saying and why they're saying it. Does that make sense? So it's like when somebody comes up, and I know everybody gets me grief about being stubborn and not listening to everybody, but that's not true. I mean, I'll argue back and forth, but I think Isaac and I in the past have proven that, listen, you can prove us wrong and we'll admit it, and you could say, hey, this is what's going on. But you said the name calling. It's like people can't go back and forth with facts. It immediately turns into, hey, Joe, you said this, you're stupid because you said this. It's not, Joe, you said this is wrong, and then it followed up with facts, right? Where you say, okay, like a debate, like a level-headed debate. It's or a like I took debate in college, where you had to bring up facts. You couldn't just say you're stupid, and people can't do that now, and I'm not sure why.
All right. Well, we're going to talk more about this tomorrow. Luke is actually going to be behind this microphone, and you excited?
Oh, dude, I'm so excited. I'm listening to you right now. I'm super excited. I'm taking notes because I've never done that before.
All right.
I gotta take notes. I'm really shy, dude. I don't like talking, so I gotta warm up.
All right. Well, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for calling, Luke. Appreciate it, man.
See you, brother. Bye.
All right. So that was Luke. Luke will be joining the program. We're going to have a lot of local voices, and really, if you look back through, philosophers have been analyzing this forever. And in the utopia, we can get everybody to, talk and make concessions and hear each other out and not name call and whatever. But I don't necessarily think that's ever achievable. And so either you give up and you don't try anything, or you do what we're going to attempt to do and just be a catalyst to get people reined in a little bit and willing to listen to voices. Like I have friends on both sides of the aisle. I consider myself very neutral. I probably have more capitalist and, I'm persuaded more by the capitalism side of things, making me probably closer to a Republican, and, rather than just an independent minded. I'm libertarian. Like I would say 90% of my philosophies are libertarian. And I'm going to interrupt myself and take another call here. If you want to get on the lines, 330-595-1600. Let's go to our next caller. All right, caller, you should be there. Are you there?
How are you doing this morning, Joe?
Good. How are you?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Glad to have you back on the radio.
Woohoo! It's great.
My question, Joe, my comment, see what you think of this. We got Doge in effect right now. Why couldn't Doge be in effect for all state, local governments, to where, as a taxpayer, which we are, we don't vote on our representatives, whether they be local, Congress, on their pay raises. They do that themselves. So what is that governing without representation, to where, like the state of Ohio, they all pass themselves 10-year pay raises? Why don't the voters get to say what you're really worth And do we okay these pay raises? We struggle in Austintown trying to pay for the police levy, but yet these legislators will vote themselves years and years of raises. And what about the national government too, the senators and the Congress? And how about their staff? Are they fully bloated to where they need to be looked at and chopped away too? It's a good thing. I'd like to see what would happen with that area.
Yeah, and you know what? If Doge has a good run nationally, and states adopt the same philosophy where they take the playbook that Doge establishes, I think it could be even more effective on your local and your state levels, because I don't think the machines are quite as strong as they are on the national level. But it's going to require the same kind of people that are doing the national level to be on the local scene. I don't know of anybody who would take it on the chin like this administration is, at the same time where all of us are wincing, hoping they don't make mistakes, hoping they don't make bad decisions, hoping that they don't get gang tackled before they have a chance to really see the effects of this thing. But if they're able to get through it and they trim down government and the people feel like they've been well served by this, I can see that brand spreading local and state.
Good deal. But what do you think of the idea of looking at our legislators, federal people too, about what their salaries are? Why don't the people get a chance to say what they're worth? Put it before the voters again.
Now, we talked last week about, I think it was Elon Musk who said, when the founders wanted public servants to not be tempted into having, corrupt deals. They wanted them to be solid enough in what they made on their salary that they wouldn't court additional money. So Elon said, well, maybe we pay our legislators off the charts more, make them comfortable so that they can worry about, instead of worrying about their finances, they're worried about good legislation for the people. How do you feel about that?
I don't think there's ever going to be enough comfortable money with all the outside influences, with PACs and big money that wants to get in. People are human, and you wave enough money at them, eventually they're going to take the bite at it. And just, if they're not, I don't want to say the word corrupt, but they might be able to be influenced, maybe ever so slightly. But as long as money could be handled like that, I don't have an answer for it, to be honest with you. But I do believe that the government needs to look at its own representative, their staffs, how big their staffs are, and just to basically look at that and publicly let the world know that, hey, we're looking at everybody, including our own.
All right, caller, thank you for popping in. Thank you for your opinion. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
All right. And so, yeah, I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast over the weekend, and Elon Musk was on there. Was being interviewed by Joe, and he was talking about what the process of what the process was like, attacking some of these machines that are, trying to destroy him financially, trying to destroy him physically, threatening him. And so there's a lot of disturbance that's happening, especially like when I look at government. I think these sweet deals that they get, they know that they're not authentic. They're getting away with it because of the position that they're serving. And so if somebody comes in and threatens where you're making a bigger paycheck and you're not giving as much value as you're taking out of the government, and you're enriching yourself, that is a big threat. You don't want to go back to being a regular worker that has to put in 8 hours a day and justify their existence. So there's going to be a lot of pushback. So, that is really the one thing that's working against having this actually be effective, is there's so many people, so many sweet deals that are going to be unwound, that, I don't know that he survives this politically. And here's a theory here. It's just my feeling. I think, and I don't want to give away the major Trump administration strategy, but I think that the machine would be going after them heavier on what they're doing with the breaking up of government if they weren't delivering these really dumb pursuits that kept the apparatus busy talking about it. So for instance, the Panama Canal, the Greenland stuff, the Gulf of America. like they're on a regular basis delivering these really weird, distractive type of things to keep the people that would otherwise be assaulting them on other things, but they're keeping them busy and occupied. So I'm kind of wondering if these things are tactical, where there's always going to be a silly one that's wrapped up in there that will take news cycles away from them really going after the important stuff. And, that would be a really good strategy as far as I'm concerned, because they'll take the bait every single time until they get wise to it. Because, I mean, if they do this quick before the media and the assaulters have a chance to coordinate on how to get rid of Trump, how to get rid of Elon Musk, how to get rid of the Doge team, maybe they got a 6 month window before the public is no longer 80% along with it. They've curated enough stories to undermine that support. But as long as the public keeps supporting it and keep bought into it, and they have enough wins, like when I look at the debt clock and I see that Doge has unearthed almost 200 billion worth of savings in the budget, that's like a scoreboard. That's like something we look at and say, okay, they're doing this, and look at the reduction that's happening so quickly. You get 6 months down the line, and maybe the stuff they're unearthing is a little bit more boring. Like, hey, we dried up $10,000 worth of spending on XYZ. Maybe it's not the red meat that we're looking for, and we're like, now this is disruptive. A lot of people are losing their jobs. The cost of eggs are still up. Unemployment's still this. Inflation is still high. This isn't working fast enough. And now I'm ready to be distracted by the old news cycle. But now that it's fresh and we're in a honeymoon phase, I think they can get, as long as they keep circulating the distracting, those distracting stories, as long as they keep making advances that are big enough to keep the public interested, they can keep going. Just hope they get enough done, in the meantime. If you want to call 330-595-1600, want to get on the topic on Doge. And when we talk about the national, it translates down to the local. So a lot of these templates that we use, let's just say we get an idealistic politician that's non-political that comes in and runs for mayor of Youngstown, or maybe they're the representative, locally. And you can get a Jim Trafficant or a personality that you can buy into that's a lot like, if I was going to create a persona that is going to have public support, it would need to be some kind of maverick change person, right? And they're going to be equally as hated on the local scene as the mavericks on the national scene, because they're going to freaking disrupt. And then what Luke was talking about is the minute that you change things up and threaten your backyard things, how long can you buy into the ideals when it's threatening something you were depending on? I mean, there's a lot of businesses here local that are making a portion of their revenue off of federal grants, right? They're not just going into the marketplace and selling product and offering services. They are collecting money of the federal government and doing something in the marketplace just enough to justify what they're pulling it on the federal. Somebody comes in and says, hey, your main revenue stream, which was dealing with the government, is going to be wiped out. Now you're going to have to go and compete just like everybody else. How long can you support that? In principle, that's a great thing, right? Yeah, let's make it authentic. Let's make it so the services are have the merit to exist in the marketplace, not this sweet deal that you get free money from the government and you're just looking to check your boxes so that check keeps coming in. Like, that's a hard haul if a majority of people in your community aren't competing the same way that you are. Right. So either everybody has to go to the federal dole and nobody really has to do anything. They just collect federal money, or nobody does it, because I'm halfway jealous that there are people not working as hard as I am, taking the risks that I am, because they've got a sure deal. I just don't think that's fair. And the second part is, think of all the talent that's locked up in federal employees that are making a paycheck bigger than the rest of us can afford to pay them. And they do far less and contribute less in there. They're locked up where their true expression of their talents aren't even being realized, because they've got a really sweet deal that they will never in a million years leave on their own, because why would they? When the rest of the marketplace, even though businesses can't afford to pay them as much as they were making before, at least they'd be working on things that have value to the local economies. And I think there was too much of that competition. And, go ahead and make that pitch to someone. Hey, do you want to go make half of what you were making before in the private sector, but you'd be working on more important things and helping the economy and helping your neighbors? That sounds like real public service, taken on the chin. But as long as government was there to offer you more and expect less, the private side, loses that ultimate game because they just can't compete. So if you're depriving companies of the money because federal dollars are easier, and you're depriving the private side of talent because the government pays more, like it's us versus them, and you create this conflict between private and public. And it's always been there, but I think the public side really has an extreme advantage, and the pain that we're going to go through to erode or push that stuff back into the real innovators is going to be, it's going to be a hard haul. But I think one of our big advantages as a country is the freedom that we have here, and how easy it is to just take a talent, go into the marketplace, and try to make your fortunes and your prosperity based on merit. And I think the more people that are supporting that, Trump was talking about this gold card, right? And so it's basically a green card. We're inviting talent from overseas to come here, bring their $5 million, establish a business, and bring your resources to the States, right? And so if we get this massive resurgence for people showing up here, not to get free dimes from the government, but to make it in an authentic marketplace, I think we start to right that ship, and we inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. And like I said, if we have 10% of the people that come into this country or come out of college or come out of high school, pick entrepreneurship as a true option, like we're pushing people there and we're rewarding people who go there, I think we change things. So let's see, a comment from social here. Nobody got the OP to vote on what Elon is doing. No one. If you're going to do things in line with the Constitution, including salaries, it has to be brought to we the people. It's not. There's no accountability in any of his actions. Numbers don't lie. People do. No bipartisan anybody has been able to forensically question what he's doing. It's operating like a Ponzi scheme. We are doing this, finding this, but no one gets to see what we actually did or found. That's how fascism works. And I would agree with you if the government was only accountable to elected officials. There were no appointees, there were no NGOs, whatever. But this is just a cog in that entire wheel. It just so happens that Elon is not the controllable by your team. And so in principle, I agree with you that nobody should be in an elected position that the people can't disagree with and wash out. But a majority of people in government are not directly elected by the people. So it would be, if you wanted to hold, like if you disagree with Elon, then the connected person is the executive branch, and you got to win an election so that your appointed Elon is there. And so it's what we chose, and that's what we're choosing. Like I said, you might disagree with it. And that's the tough part about losing elections, is you're going to see a whole lot of stuff that you wouldn't have done had you have been there. But that's the consequences of the election. And so we lived with a Joe Biden. We are going to live with a Trump. We lived with a Barack Obama. So there were a lot of things that we didn't have direct control over. And it's just our form of government. But I think direct elections to every appointed position would be total madness. We could barely collect enough insight to elect the people that we are offered. There's too many of them. Too many cogs in that wheel, and adding more to that. I mean, I don't know. I just don't think that's a feasible option. But I'll put you in the column of you disagree with the appointed, what those appointees are doing. But I think, that will be, I think midterms are going to be a bloodbath for the Republicans. So it will only be 2 years before you get your wish of having a little bit more of control. The pendulum swings in the other direction. So once you get full control, you better make a majority of the people happy, because those people that you made unhappy are going to come out freaking swinging, and they're going to wrestle that control right back from you. And I think that's how we were designed. I think the conflicts between being in power and out of power, and the emotional consequences that go along with it. If you have conservatives in power too long, they're going to go completely in a direction that's too far. And I think if liberals go too far, but if we can somehow figure out to keep things in the middle, I don't think we would have such drastic pendulum swims between elections. It's like whiplash of what we experience now. Denise says, Doge.com, if you do want to pay attention to what Doge is doing, the receipts that they're posting about what they're able to cut, it's really an interesting thing to see how our government, I mean, one of the subscription, I'm going to call it subscription corruption, is where, you want to funnel money to a company by buying overpriced subscriptions that were not even used. So if you had Microsoft 365 or you had Politico subscriptions, like, you just want to figure out a creative way to get money to somebody who you like. And so you create all these subscriptions that halfway could be justified. I mean, our politicians need news subscriptions so they can pay attention to what's going on at the same time that, same thing with like Office, but they had like double the number of users. So you got to ask yourself, is it that they're so stupid and so clumsy that their inefficiencies are just because they're inept? Or was this stuff done on purpose to funnel money to your friends at, news organizations and companies that agreed with you? Luke says, would that person have a problem with Doge? It was created by Joe Biden. And absolutely not. That was the tribal talk that we talked about earlier. If it's your guy, you're totally willing, because they're doing stuff you like. It's only when the other side is doing it that you disagree with their motives, their intentions, they're evil, they're Nazi, like all of that stuff. It doesn't even snap anybody's attention, because you already know that if it were on the Biden side, you'd have all the conservatives up in arms. If there were conservatives version of Elon Musk going through the budget items and cutting out things that they dislike. I mean, how many budget cuts are you attributing to a partisanship? Like if I were just go through these entities and keep all the conservative sweet deals, but eliminate all the liberal ones, you obviously can see that they've got some partisan motives in it. But what if it was across the board where there was some conservative? Like, what happens if Elon Musk gets into the Defense Department, finds a SpaceX contract that could have been done better or gotten better pricing? What if he went in there and cut his own freaking contract? Would that add to the credibility that he's looking at this from a completely different filter, where it's not a partisan filter, but it's an objective filter? We'll see, because he's going to get there, and we'll see how they treat those ones that he has an interest in. Let's see. Greg says, a good guest, it was a Dem doing it. You'd be praising them as hero, like you are the reason we have such division. And that's what we're just saying, is that depending on what tribe you were in, it's tough to dig down. You run across these people all the time. Like they will say the Ukrainian thing. A good checkmate that I heard was, I support Ukraine. I think Russia's, a big fat jerk and is the bad guy in this deal. I feel so strongly about it. I think the United States should support Ukraine. Everybody's heard you up to this point, and cool. Now, how long into that are you willing to go? Are you willing to start making donations to Ukraine? Can you make a contribution so that your money? Well, if it's your money and it's your kid going to the front lines, you might have more questions than this blindly send it there. So a lot of us would send money to Ukraine if we knew that that money was getting for a specific purpose. But a lot of us believe that anything you send to Ukraine has a lot of corruption going. So maybe out of $1 billion, maybe 10 billion goes to what you would spend it, and maybe 90 billion goes to corrupt politicians in Ukraine. Would you still send it if you knew a majority of your money was going to parts of it that you disagreed with? Probably not, because you freaking wrote the check. And we have a better appreciation for how money is being spent when, instead of the government sending it from other people, it's the money that we send it. So let's see. All back to party bias we talked about. Absolutely, Luke. And this person says, Doge's website is unable to bring those numbers to the floor of the people's. No oversight by anybody. Numbers don't lie. People do. Stuff the program down we the people's throat. That's fascism. All right, I'll just let that be its own thing, because as far as transparency goes and being able to keep an eye on it and have the public be able to look and see what the real plan is, what they're accomplishing, and what positive things have come out of it. Compared to last administrations, I think that they've been fairly open about where they're heading and what they've done. So maybe out of the Biden administration, I would give them a rating of like 0 as far as transparency go. I think they were really, really corrupt, and I think they were playing the game that every president has ever played. And I think maybe we get up to a 10 with this administration, is trying to be because the straddle is, if you give away too much of the plan, then the plan will be ineffective because you've just given your plan to the enemy. But giving enough to the public to be able to keep score and find out whatever they're doing is working and you have some results from, is probably the proper way of looking at it. Greg says, being a sore loser is one of the first things I teach my kid not to be. It's funny how adults can do the same. I tell my kid all the time, like he believes that when you become an adult, that somehow you automatically get maturity. And I tell him all the time that adults just are kids that have role played and pretended to be mature. But when it comes down to it, they suffer from all the same things. So if you do a good job at raising, a teenager into young adulthood who has the right principles, then at least when they fake and mature, it's based on real principles. But I'm a cynic that way, and I don't think the general public has the ability to be adult-like. I mean, just listen to talk radio and callers, NPR, C-SPAN. Listen to the callers and what they say, right? And there's not a whole lot of real insights that people have on their own. It's a lot of talking points that they adopted from the media that they watch. So they don't truly believe it. They're pissed off about it. Don't get me wrong. They're emotionally charged and they feel passionately about how they feel. But most of it is sort of like they caught the disease of their opinion from other people. And the people that are, making them catch that disease are really good about making it believable. So a lot of people are like, hey, I just heard that Elon Musk didn't invent Teslas, right? It was invented by somebody else and he's using their idea, or his dad, gave him all his money from a emerald mine, or all of this stuff that almost exists. No matter how many times it's shot down by debunking, it still exists as something people absolutely will always believe in. As long as we live in a climate where the sensationalism, that's it. As long as the sensationalism about the bad news about the opposing person is believable and repeated. How many of you out there believe that Trump said that neo-Nazis were very fine people, right? Because that played repeated for years. And if you ask somebody off the street whether or not Trump thought it was the neo-Nazis are very fine people, and how many of them are going to say, absolutely. And so we're countering this propaganda against objectivity. And so I think you lose that game because it's so strong and powerful. This person says, I prefer unaccountable government with bipartisan questioning, so it's the best for all parties involved, which is John Locke's principle. Do the best for all parties involved. He input that is the foundation of our Constitution. Without this, it's not a republic any longer. It's fascism. It's a good point. And, you would see government take on a completely different form. If it was a club where you had elites that were just assembling as much resources and power as they could, you have what we have right now. If you knew that, okay, well, this is ultimately going to be corrupted, so we turn this thing over, we take a lot of people to jail, we hold people accountable, we're not nice to our team, even when it means, that you got to lose some power for the sake of your integrity. It would take on, you would see government being held to such a high standard, almost like a bank, right? You want the people working being a bank teller and who can walk into the vault, you want them to be above board. So if you would hold theft and, if you have addictions, you'd hold them to a higher counter because they're supposed to be so unimpugnable that they would, if you accuse them of something, you would have everybody going to bat for them because look at have a high standard they kept themselves to and everyone else. But I literally think if you brought our founders together today, brought them into a boardroom, had them evaluate everything that's going on, they would have a great deal of criticisms for every piece of our government, no matter which party. I think the Republicans are doing it all wrong. I think the Democrats are doing it all wrong. I think the voting public is doing it all wrong because we've been fed what the machine and, we're being controlled by what the machine wants us to do. So I've got a conspiracy theories a mile deep on how corrupt everything really is. And it's the Super Bowl for libertarians to watch this stuff get played out because everything you thought was happening is probably happening, whether or not it's JFK, MLK, the assassination attempts. Like this stuff is deep, and there are a lot of controlling factors that aren't electable. Like, do you think if you thought that there were people that were unelectable that are allowed to control news narratives or control who gets to advertise, but you didn't elect those people, is that an extension of the fascism that the Elon Musk and the Doge? It's just one of the many arms of the machine that controls the output. So in principle, we want to rip all of that away and just make it elected officials, make smaller government, because without a dictator, you can't tell people what to do. So things become what they're naturally going to become. And some of those natural things are equally as bad as the ones that your virtuous dictator would control. So the founders kind of saw that we need to make it super small so it is more controllable through the power of vote. But that's not what we created, because as long as it was our dictator, they can get a lot more stuff done that we like them to do. And so that's again, that's just it's big, it's cumbersome, and it's expansive. So 330-595-1600 if you want to give your opinion. Lots of great comments on the social media. So those of you who are listening, I really appreciate everyone who is listening to this talk channel. Youngstown gets to produce our sounding board for how we feel about things, both on the local and national scene. A lot of us have our opinions about how things should be done or need to be done. And we need a voice of sharing those to kind of through the frictions of public expression, kind of filter it down until we get to ideas that and concessions that all of us can agree on. One thing that was brought up, again, connected to this Elon Musk and corruption thing, was the insider trading. And these politicians who end up getting fabulously wealthy after being elected to the public. So if you take just John Doe, someone out of the public, how would you take a freshman electee who's just a regular dude, high intellect, likability, has charisma, and we want to contain this one. We want to make it so they are free from the temptation to enrich themselves. Could you do it? Could you put some, I don't know, pressure or regulation or rules on it to keep the next Nancy Pelosi from having legislative control, having information that nobody else has, and being able to make stock trades with your salary and do a little bit better than the average investor can do, because that is an advantage that you should keep. People who have access to information, like, Martha Stewart went to jail for something that Nancy Pelosi is probably equally as guilty of. And so let's just say it were you and me. Okay. So I'm a postal worker, and I'm putting down whatever they make, $70,000, $80,000 a year being a postal worker. And the bank account swells to $50 million. Right. And so I get on the radar because something that doesn't make sense. You go to the bank and you make a deposit over 10,000, raises a red flag. Somebody looks into it to see what's going on. And then they kind of look into it and see if there's anything nefarious going on. So let's just say that early on in the insider trading, you get a windfall from a politician, where when they say that they made some money, a little red flag goes up, just like it does at the bank with mine and your deposits. So then you have an investigative body to see what happened. All right, she made a trade, or maybe her husband made a trade, or maybe some LLC made a trade, or something that's connected to her made a trade. Well, what would they do to us? Well, they would investigate, find out if it was connected to something, and you hold the person accountable that had the information, right? Not the trade, not the LLC, not the husband, the person that had the ability to share that information with the person that made that trade. And if you end to end thousands of these trades, you can get really rich off just knowing and being able to control legislation and regulation on companies. And then the rest of the public's like saying, that's a pretty good deal. If I want a piece of that, I'm going to have to just get myself elected so I could go be corrupt too, versus saying, yeah, you know what? That's really shady. It's really slimy. You should be using your position to get advantage over the regular investor. And I'm going to walk you in the perp line, fines, jail, prison. And when you start being serious about people going into political office to enrich themselves, then you dissuade somebody from taking the risk. You make it hard for them to cash in on that position. And I'm not going to trust anybody that their primary objective isn't to, go to war to make more money or pass regulations to make more money. That's human nature. We are all going to try to take advantage of the position that we have. I cite this all the time because it just grates on me. I get so pissed off about it when a judge gets pulled over for DUI and he pulls the "don't you know who I am" card, right? And it just illustrates the fears of every person that votes, that somebody, once they get in power, thinks that the rules don't apply to them anymore. Just the brazenness of thinking that you are above this, you're driving, the cops saw that you were doing something to be pulled over, and I'll give two shits about what position you hold. You let that cop do their job, and it's up to you not to swerve and drive under the influence. You should say double the repercussions on a judge, because you should know better. I bet you put a whole lot of shitheads in prison for driving drunk. And if you're having put a bunch of guys in jail, you should freaking join them. And it should be worse for you, not that you pull your I'm a judge card and somehow get a better sweet deal than everybody else. Denise says term limits. I absolutely agree that, the longer you're there, the more likely it is for you to line up your avenues of corruption so that you harden them. You insulate yourself. You make it, not only do you have a sweet deal, but you make a sweet deal that is harder to connect to you. Your first one's going to be clumsy, and I can catch you early if I get you on the clumsy one. You've been doing it for 10 years, and you know how they, evaluate it and investigate that corruption. So you just position yourself so the way that you're doing it to enrich yourself is hard or passes the suspicions of the people who are investigating. You're in control of that shit. Like an earlier caller said, if you're voting yourself raises, right, and you're in control of the rules that govern you, or you think you're going to be strict on yourself? I mean, come on, it's stupid. You know who should set your rules? Your opposition. Your opposition should keep you reined in. Who's going to balance you out? And when you go off the reservation, who's going to hold you accountable? Absolutely no one. The other people in Congress aren't going to do it because they're looking to say, I'm going to get a piece of that too, as soon as I'm in that position. So you can't trust it. You can't, the only way you can deal with it is if you had a straight shooter in there, the Elliot Ness that will go in there and clean house no matter who you are, and make it less likely to happen, not more likely to happen. So 330-595-1600. We're going to wrap the show up here in a couple minutes. If you have any last comments during this week, this 9:00 spot, we are going to go and share our talk hosts, give them the stage to be able to talk about these, these topics, involve the commentary of the people that are listening, both on social media and also the comments that are coming from social media. We are establishing the sounding board for the people, giving all sides and all people a chance to, if you've got a good idea, float it. Another comment here from social media. Let's see. What we need to do, bipartisan, is rid our election of CPACs, super PACs, etc. No one knows how much cash from foreign influence injects itself into our election. If it's not we the people's pure opinion of the candidates without foreign injections, whose is it? That's where the problem lies. And yes, pro-Putin CPACs exist. In reality, it needs to change. And the only pushback I'm going to give to that, and in principle, I agree with you that the influence that skews things. What about when we have something like Social Security, or we have our seniors, or we have NRA, or we have an interest that is subject to regulations and so needs to have a voice against the regulations that are set? Do they deserve the First Amendment rights of being able to defend their positions and use the the groups of that money that you're talking about to defend it? Well, when it's yours and it's important to you, you're collecting Social Security, so you want the group that's going to defend you to have way more money. But as soon as you give one person an interest that's overpowered, now you let other interests that maybe you disagree with have that same kind of power. So it's not like you can say, well, leave mine alone. Leave the Department of Education's unions alone. Let me take the senior Social Security and all those. Let's keep those guys having power because we agree with how they're defending me. But let's take the ones we disagree with. So it's either all or nothing as far as I'm concerned. And I think there's some interest out there that we want to have a powerful or an equally powerful voice against as the legislative branch has to assault. Like, you can pass legislation that takes out complete industries. You can put high permitting, long regulations, huge oversight, huge fines, and cripple business, right? Or cripple whatever it is that you want. If I wanted an industry to disappear, all I'd have to do is have the political party that's against that industry. Let's just say I hate oil, right? And I want to make oil development and refining, and I wanted to wipe it off. I can create regulations that say, all right, well, I'm going to make a permit for new oil prospecting, make it so that there's a 5-year wait list before we approve any new permits, right? Now, if there's not a committee or some money to push back against that and bring public support against that, what are you going to do? They can just legislate whole industries out of business. Mike Rapovi said Social Security should not have to be defended. It's the people's paid in, period. And this is, this is a favorite topic of mine. It doesn't have an answer because we just end up saying the same things over and over about it. But here's the deal. If it was a program that was managed correctly, then you're absolutely right. So you had a pot of money that you were going to go on vacation with, and you put money in there. And by the time you go to vacation, if the money is there and it was invested the way that, low risk, whatever, then there should be more money in the pot. And then you go to the pot and get the vacation money. But the agreement was that we were going to give the money all to the government. It wasn't going to be put in a pot. And then the government was could do whatever they wanted to with that money. And then the government just kind of owes you back the money. Right. So if there was a pot of money, then you're absolutely right. You paid into it. It's sitting there, whatever. So who do you hold responsible for having looted the pot of money? Right. Government. Well, you gave them the power and they're not even there. The people that stole the money and the projects that were spent paying it, you can't even hold it accountable. You're holding your government accountable for it. And if the government doesn't have the money to cover the liabilities of it, then who are you going to go after? So you're basically, there's a specter of the person that's responsible that you can't sue. You can't claw the money back. Somebody's got to solve the mathematical problem. I agree with you from the person that paid into it. It's not my fault. Like, I'm just a taxpayer. You took my money. You freaking owe it to me. Well, the you is also the rest of us. And the rest of us are like, well, wait a minute. I wasn't part of this. If you leave it up to the people and what are they going to do? When you pitch it like I did, should we leave the money in a pot and then when people go to collect it, there's more of it? Or should we raid it and just pay back with IOUs? It was dumb to begin with because none of that money actually exists that we are entitled to. And there's nobody to hold accountable for getting that money back. But you can, I think the best compromise in the whole Social Security thing is that you stop making the same mistake, right? You keep that money. You don't just put it in the general fund. You're not allowed to spend that. You earmark it for whatever future generation. And then you worry about the current obligations that you have and fix what's already been done. I think every taxpayer that paid into it needs to get their original investment back for sure. Think of it as they bought T-bills. And if it were private companies, then you would have given money to a private company. They would have invested in workforce and product. And then the value of what you put in there would be worth more. And then you could, if you put it in a fund or you bought stocks with it or whatever, that's theoretically over a course of 40 years of your working life, you would have more money than was left over. Right now you have zero. You just, like I said, you're holding T-bills. And both sides are immovable on this because both sides are absolutely right. It just so happens that we gave the money to an untrustworthy source and they squandered it. And now they're looking around saying, well, I wasn't here when it happened. I can only make good with the math today. And we're like, I paid your ass. I trusted you. And if I'm going to have trust and faith in the government, they owe me. And they're absolutely right. So we're a little bit of an impasse. I don't necessarily think that anybody's going to touch the rail that's going to undo their political career by saying Social Security is not going to be paid by somebody. So I think they're just going to endlessly kick this one down the road. I just don't think anybody's going to have the testicular fortitude to do any of the math that fixes Social Security. But anyway, thank you guys for joining me for today's show. Tomorrow we'll be back. The MLO bros are going to be down here giving a try at it and talking local politics, some national stuff right along. So this is your Youngstown's talk channel. So make sure you plan to join us every day at 9:00 here from Youngstown studio, and we'll catch you then.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. Thank you for your support.